contemplation-rich activity. Here we're going to focus on some implications that follow upon what we looked at in our video on contemplation and the one on contemplation as the end of man. Remember, our definition of contemplation was an intellectual gazing inspired by love, gazing especially at the highest things, or as Aristotle would say, the first causes. And we talked about Aristotle's thoughts on how contemplation is most of all the fulfillment, the flourishing, the full actualization of human nature. Well, if this is so, then understanding contemplation implies that we should be able to then apply it back to all of human life. And the more that we see that in contemplation, most of all, is the full flourishing of human nature, this will have implications for everything else we do. I want to connect this also to the videos that we've done on leisure and work and amusement, because we've seen connections between contemplation and leisure. Leisure being that activity that most of all has its meaning in itself, that most of all is in contemplative activities. So what I want to look at right now is how kind of high leisure / contemplation can leaven, can be brought in rich ways into activities that are not themselves contemplation, but can still have a contemplative richness in them. So we're going to look at a couple examples of amusement and work and see how they too can have a contemplative richness in them. To point us in that direction, here's a really neat point that Aristotle says about contemplative activity. Contemplative activity is always an activity that is not going somewhere other than where it is. Contemplation is a way of being here, of being alive in the present, as it were about the present, going more deeply into having and living reality in the gazing upon it. It's not about producing something. It's never about getting somewhere else. It's about being here with a certain fullness. So bearing that in mind, let's just think about how amusement and work can have a certain contemplative richness to them. So think, for instance, about a family game. Look, this family game might just be kind of pure amusement. We're just having a really good time, kind of like screaming down a roller coaster. There's nothing wrong with just like pure fun, pure amusement. This is not an instance of life is so serious, you've got to get seriousness into everything you do. No, but rather we can enrich. We can be thinking about how can we enrich the various things that we do in appropriate ways. So something as amusement, say a family game. What if it really is also an opportunity to get to know one another better? In the midst of the fun, we really have an eye for seeing more, noticing important aspects of the people that we're with. This is a contemplative richness, even in the middle of amusement. How about another example of watching a movie together? It's fine for it just to be a super fun movie. But, it's also great to take the opportunity, at least with some movies, to get maybe fundamentally amusement, but to be looking for the deeper richness. And then looking to be able to draw that out and have conversations where we look together more closely at reality. We can be cultivating a contemplative spirit that kind of always has an eye for going for a deeper richness, even in the midst of amusement. Likewise with work. So many different kinds of work, but just think about the old spirit of craftsmanship. Right? A craftsman, he's doing work, he's not contemplating. But this work, again, can be very leavened by a contemplative aspect. One great way of seeing that is to see work as being always about, in some way, making beauty, making something beautiful. If a craftsman is going to make something beautiful, he's got to, at least to some extent, first see something beautiful. He has to have an eye for beauty, to have an eye and a hand to bring it about. So good work can cultivate in us a contemplative eye, a contemplative spirit that again can be at work leavening the work itself. Think of any work that we're doing. How about gardening? With a contemplative spirit, with a contemplative eye. Building a house. You know, I mean, if we're talking about, you know, doing some accounting and we're you know, doing the numbers in the ledger, it's going to be harder for us to say, okay, well, here's the contemplative way of doing that. But still, I say, always to have an eye for quality, right workmanship, craftsmanship, an eye for quality. There's a great connection between a contemplative spirit and seeing and seeking quality. It can be hard to express that exactly, but I just really want to emphasize here, if we know what we're looking for, if we're trying to cultivate a contemplative spirit, we can be bringing a contemplative richness to all the activities of our day. One final one, cooking together in the kitchen. You know, there's again, the personal connection, the sense of gratitude, the sense of appreciating natural stuff, the sense of a kind of beauty that is being wrought in the provisioning of human life, that then brings us to the table, eating around the table with a kind of contemplative spirit, a sense of presence and being together and getting to know one another and turning our eyes together to higher things. A contemplative spirit can leaven absolutely every activity in every corner of our life. And this is not about being the guy that's going to make things be overly serious. This is about becoming more the person that people will say, I love being with him, because he gives that greater richness, a greater life to what we do.